Welcome back, Walter Football OddsShopper, the two of us together. Well, that's Walt Ametan, so technically the two of us, but the two entities continue as Walter is back with 5 more plays to look at. Look, can't go undefeated every week, but you finish up, and that's what's most important, my friend. So we ask everybody, hit the thumbs up, subscribe here. We'll tell you all about what's happening at walterfootball.com, especially as mock drafts continue to get updated. Some really good money-making opportunities, but 5 picks to jump into this week, and we always look to go perfect, right? This doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have losses sometimes. Just lost my first bowl game against the spread. So you're going to have some losses, and it's just frustrating sometimes because when you know you have the right side, like in that Eagles-Cowboys game, when it was a 3-point game with 2 minutes left, you're like, okay, we're going to cover, and in the back of my head, I'm like, all they need to do is not fumble, and then like a second later, Miles Sanders fumbles, the Cowboys kick the field goal and win by 6, and the line's 5.5. But we can bounce back, and it's still 3 in 2 weeks, so let's bounce back to 5-0 again.
Absolutely, and that's the most important part is we finish up. All right, so that's the beauty of what you're doing here is if you don't go 5-0, we're still going to finish up. But look, 5 more opportunities to nail it. Let's begin with the Cardinals-Falcons game.
Yeah, so I was waiting on news here, and I was happy to get it before the show. I was waiting on news for Colt McCoy. He practiced fully on Wednesday, so that was a good sign. I wanted him to play and not Trace McSorley, so I wanted to bet Arizona plus 3.5 against the Falcons. This is actually like a step down in competition for Colt McCoy. In 3 of his 4 games that he played this year, he's gone against the 49ers, the Patriots, and the Broncos. Like, those are 3 of the better defenses in the NFL. Now he gets Atlanta, which is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And the Cardinals have they have good talent, like on offense. DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, James Conner, even Greg Dortch is going nuts last game. So McCoy, I feel like he can have a nice game here against an Atlanta pass defense, which is just terrible. And Atlanta overall is terrible. The last time they lost by more than 3 points was won by more than 3 points. It was week 6 against San Francisco. And that was a game where the 49ers were missing half their starters. Like Nick Bosa was out, Trent Williams was out, like George Kittle, like all their guys were out in that game. And that's why Atlanta won. And ever since then, they've covered the spread once. Remember, they started 6-0 against the spread. I think they're like 1-5-2 or 1-6-2 against the spread since. So Atlanta is just terrible. I don't know what they're doing, favored by more than 3. Arizona plus 3.5 seems like a gift. And I think we have motivation on our side with Arizona. Like, first of all, JJ Watt announced that he's going to be retiring. So I think the players around him are going to play hard. And then Atlanta, they were just eliminated from the playoffs last week. So, like, what do they have to play for? I just don't see it. So, Arizona plus 3.5 are getting good value, by the way. The line has dropped to 3, so I like it a lot.
Not much that anybody else could add on that one. So let's keep it moving to Detroit, Chicago here. An interesting one with the Lions still alive, Walter.
Yeah, it really saddens me to make this pick because I've been on Detroit all year. I actually bet them to win the Super Bowl back in July at like 165 to 1 odds. I just thought like this team was going to make the playoffs. I thought in all likelihood, and to get a 165 to 1 team in the playoffs was good value. But I think the wheels are starting to come off for the Lions. Look at the past 2 games. They were just gashed by the Panthers. It was so ugly last week. The week before, they beat the Jets, but they needed a block punt to get there. They were outgained in yards per play against the Jets. Zach Wilson, by the way, is playing against them. So the past 2 weeks, they really haven't been that impressive. And they beat Chicago earlier in the year in Chicago, but they were outgained in that game, 408 to 323. Chicago averaged 1.5 more yards per play. It was a 31-30 game. And so I don't see why the Lions would suddenly beat Chicago by more than 6 points. It just seems like the Lions are not that good of a team to surrender all these key numbers. Like, the only key number you're not getting if you bet the Lions is 7. Or Chicago rather. So I just think that the spread doesn't make sense. And, teams like right now, home teams only get like 1 or 1.5 points on the line. Like, it used to be 3. I think that's a misconception now. Now it's like 1 or 1.5. So this line translated from Lions -6 would be like -3 in Detroit or in Chicago rather. But the Lions are plus 2.5. And this is like week 11. So I don't understand like why there's suddenly a 5.5 point line movement. And I think there's a chance that Detroit chokes in this game. I mean, they haven't been in this position before. They're expected to win. I think there's a chance that they just have a major letdown, and Justin Fields could run all over them. We saw it last time. He ran for 140 yards against Detroit. So I think that the Lions or the Bears could upset the Lions. At the very worst, I think the Lions win by 3.
Now, we always talk at the end of the show, and you always ask me where I am on your 5 plays. I did not play this game, although I will tell you on this play. I did play the total, though. I did go over 50.5, and I am curious because you have 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL. I think that actually helps Chicago covering in a higher scoring game. If Chicago can score, Detroit's going to score. That would be my thought process in it.
Yeah, Detroit's offense is a lot better at home, too. Jared Goff tends to struggle in cold conditions or if it's rainy, but in a dome, he's great. Chicago has trouble defending slot receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. So you're right. Detroit's going to score a lot, but Chicago's going to score a lot, too. Justin Fields, like I said, he ran for 140 yards against his defense last time. So, yeah, I envisioned like another 27-24 seems like a low score for this game, but I think it's probably likely result. I think maybe 30-27, something like that.
All right, let's move. We have 3 more plays to get to, but let's remind everybody what you and your staff, your crew of winners are doing over at walterfootball.com. We say all the time, it's the 5-tool site. You can get so much happening there, but we love to highlight what you guys are doing on a mock draft level as well, because not many, if any, people are killing it like you guys.
Yeah, last year, Charlie Campbell, our senior NFL draft analyst, he hit his first top 10 picks in his mock draft, which is incredible. And he just has all the inside info. So we did well with our draft props, except for the extreme long shots. We just updated our mock drafts. We do it every single week. I added a 3rd round recently. So yeah, like every single week you can get a new mock draft on the site. So yeah, check out walterfootball.com for all the draft content.
Let's move now to the Broncos-Chiefs game, and definitely interested to see where you are on this one, and especially with the Denver team, that the good is, I guess, their head coach is gone. The bad is they're still stuck with that quarterback.
Yeah, although Russell Wilson had a great game against Kansas City the last time he played them, almost won. And in fact, if he didn't leave with a concussion, maybe he completes the comeback and the Broncos win outright. Yeah, I like Denver again, plus 12.5 against the Chiefs. I took them last time they played each other, and I'm going to do it again. Like there are 2 angles I love here. First of all, teams that get completely embarrassed, and the Broncos were on national TV. I guess Nickelodeon. I don't know if that's national TV, but still, like, they tend to bounce back. And 51-14 loss on Christmas. I feel like Denver just didn't really try hard in that game. They mailed it in, and this is their Super Bowl. Like, they have nothing else to play for this year. They can't even tank because, they don't even have their own pick. So, like, losing doesn't even matter here. Like, beating Kansas City kind of maybe not invalidates or like validates their season, but still, they get to knock the Chiefs out of a potential number 1 seed. I think this is it for them. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at Kansas City, and Denver, like, except for that Christmas game, it's kind of remarkable. They haven't lost by more than 13 all year. So yeah. I don't know why they would suddenly lose by 13 or more against a Kansas City team that hasn't put together a full game. Like, look at last week. They got out to a big lead against Seattle, and then they scored just once in the second half. It's like it's basically what they've done all year. I think the Chiefs are going to be they're still going to be stagnant here. The second angle, by the way, you mentioned that the Broncos fired their coach. Teams firing their coach and playing in their first game are 15-10 against the spread in their first game since 2010. And they won outright as underdogs in 10 of 18 of those games. I'm not saying Denver's going to win outright or anything, not that crazy, but I think this is going to be a close game. I think the Chiefs win by about 7 or 10. And like this said, the Broncos keep all their games close, and the Chiefs don't really put teams away all that often. They almost lost to the Raiders on Monday night. They almost lost to a Malik Willis-led Titans team. They almost lost to this Denver team a few weeks ago. So I think this is going to be a close game. Yeah,
look, I definitely did not want to lead you in any way as I was introducing the game. And I think if anybody thought you would go KC or was just staying away from that game, you gave them sound reasoning, which you always do. But in this case, it might have been needed a little extra because you were taking Denver. I love it. I love the play. I love the backing of it as well. Nothing I'm going to add on that one, except I'm just going to tail Denver and be excited to be one of the lone people in the room to cash a ticket, I'm sure, alongside you, of course. Seattle, this was a game, reminder, right? Like Kansas City, Seattle, that big line. You had KC on that one, moving back to fading KC. What about Seattle and the Jets? This is one of the few games where both sides need a win.
Yeah, they're both 7 and 8. They need a win. And yeah, I took the Chiefs against the Seahawks last week, which kind of goes against my argument that the Chiefs put.
It was a lone outlier, to be fair. To your point, they've been struggling outside of that, and you just got ahead on the one time at which they were covering that big spread.
Yeah, and the reason I went with the Chiefs was because I was so against Seattle. I think Seattle sucks, and I don't think people realize it yet because they look at team records. They look at 7 and 8. They're like, oh, this team's not bad. Maybe they're not that good, but they're average. But Seattle in net adjusted EPA, they're 30th in the NFL. There are only 2 teams worse than them in the league, and so that kind of tells you that Denver might be better than Seattle, which sounds a little crazy. Like maybe some of those guys from the mental ward we talked about a couple weeks ago to take me away to the Byberry institution. But if you think about it, like Denver won in Seattle in week 1, and Denver has a much better defense. And so like Seattle suddenly, like their wheels are coming off too. Look at the recent games. They were blown out by the Chiefs. They were blown out by the 49ers. Okay, fine. They got blown out by good teams. They almost lost to the Rams. They got blown out by the Panthers at home. They lost at home to the Raiders. They were blown out by the Buccaneers in London. Like the Seattle team has been horrible, and I don't think people have realized it. And now we have a lot of injuries here. Tyler Lockett, he might play, but he may not be 100%. Abraham Lucas, the right tackle, mispractice. Noah Fant, Marquise Goodwin, Kenneth Walker, all these guys mispractice. So this team's going to be even worse than they usually would be. So I like the Jets here, except for the Jaguar game, whereas I feel like they just gave up because they knew Zach Wilson couldn't lead them to victory. So except for that Jaguars game, the Jets have played well recently. As I said before, they almost beat the Lions. If it wasn't for that block punt, they may have beaten the Lions. They gave the Bills all they can handle, and before that, they were 1 yard away from beating the Vikings in Minnesota. So I think the Jets are definitely a lot better than the Seahawks. So I think the Jets win here.
So it's, again, fade the Jets. Oh, Seahawks, sorry. Fade the Seahawks. They suck. Seahawks suck. Yep. That's easy to remember. Seahawks suck. I want to save some time for this one because I have no idea and never do where you're going with these games. And I did make a play. I am on a side here, and I'm always curious to see, all right, I feel good about it versus let me race to the book and see if I can cash out that ticket and tail Walt. So we have another scenario where the Chargers needing victories here into the postseason versus a Rams team who just come off that flat-out humiliation, embarrassment of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I feel like I've been talking down about the Chargers like this entire time. I've compared them to the Nikola EV company where they had that commercial where they had that truck going downhill. It looks so great. And then a couple months later, there's a short report published that car had no engine. They just pushed it down the hill. I compare that to this Charger team where, they're so flashy because they have Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. All these guys are great fantasy players, but this team has no substance. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't get to the quarterback. They can't protect the quarterback, as we saw Monday night. And they can't run the ball. Eckler is good at catching passes, but they can't run the ball. So they can't do anything well except for throw, especially when they're behind. And we kind of saw it Monday night. They were up like 10-3 at halftime against the Colts, only 13-3 after 3 quarters. That was against Nick Foles, like playing just horribly. Like I don't know if you saw the advanced metrics on Foles' game, like that, they were pretty hilarious. Like when he was under pressure, he completed 2 passes for 7 yards and he had 2 interceptions. Like that's how bad he was. Like they might as well just gotten the guy out of the stands. He would have done just as well, or just as poorly, I guess. So I don't understand why this Charger team is favored by 6.5 on a neutral field, really, against the Rams. I made this line -3, Chargers -3. I have no respect for the Chargers at all. If anything, that Colts game helped us because I think people are, they're more bullish on the Chargers. They saw a 20-3 win for people who didn't watch the game or barely watched it. They're like, okay, they beat the Colts. They can beat the Rams by 17 too. But the Rams have been playing well recently. It's odd to say, but they beat the Raiders. They almost beat the Seahawks, which I guess not that impressive. But still, they crushed the Broncos on Christmas. Baker Mayfield suddenly finally playing well under, like, now that he's coached well for the first time in his career, he's playing well. Cam Akers looks like he's back, and I can't see the Chargers stopping Cam Akers unless that performance on Christmas was a fluke. We're getting all the key numbers except for one. We're getting a team with more rest. The Chargers are in a short week, and I like the Rams here. I think the Rams covered the 6.5.
Beautiful. See, I've been paying attention. All of that slighting and talking down and great analogies that you've been using to describe the Chargers. This thing jumps out, immediately jumped on the Rams, and I was waiting for this day of judgment. I love it. I love it.
Glad we're on the same side.
I'm glad we're on the same side. If I'm on the other side, it doesn't matter to you. You have a proven track record. You could just say, I told you so ahead of time. Let's run back the top 5 that you have, Walt, and then hit every one or two that made the cutting floor that didn't quite make the top 5. And then before we get out of here, we'll remind everybody once more about WalterFootball.com.
All right, the top 5 plays this week: Cardinals plus 3.5, Bears plus 6, Broncos plus 12.5, Jets minus 1.5, Rams plus 6.5. So the two teams that almost made the cut. Looking at the Ravens-Steelers game, the Ravens are minus 2.5 right now. We're waiting on Lamar Jackson's status. If he plays, this line's going to, I feel like, skyrocket to maybe 4.5, 5, something like that. So we're going to get great value with the minus 2.5. So something to watch out for. If you think Lamar Jackson's going to play, I think betting the Ravens might be good. And then if he's announced, you can go the other way and get a nice middle on the 3 and the 4. So it's something to look out for in real life. But in the contest, Ravens minus 2.5 kind of intrigues me. Also, Saints plus 6.5, because the line has dropped to 5.5. Now that I think it's kind of obvious that Jalen Hurts is not going to play. Lane Johnson is going to be out too. I like taking good teams or well-coached teams with their backup quarterbacks. But here I feel like this line's a little too high. The Saints I feel like are an underrated team. I think they can keep this game close, especially if the Eagles don't have their top tackle and their quarterback. So Saints plus 6.5 looks good too.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense, especially that last part about Lane Johnson. All right, WalterFootball.com. Pump up the mock drafts, but you guys do other stuff as well. I don't want people thinking that it's just a mock draft central place, even though it is a mock draft central place.
Yeah, we have updated picks throughout the week. If there are injuries, line moves, we'll update it on the site. We have Thursday thoughts, Saturday notes, Sunday morning final thoughts, and then the Monday night game stuff. So throughout the week, we're going to have updates on the picks. As I mentioned before, we have bowl picks. They're 9-1 so far, and I just published 5 more, including the 2 playoff games. So check that out as well. We grade every signing, every trade. We grade every coach firing too, so you can see what I thought about the Broncos firing their coach. So yeah, you can get everything at WalterFootball.com.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, my friend. 5-0. We'll see you again next week. Thanks to everybody out there. Thumbs up, subscribe. Walter, always a pleasure, man.
Sounds good. See you next week.